But I think my decision later on was also vindicated, and I had great fun working in that company. So when I joined, as I said, we were about 100 people, and it was a very interesting experience because even though we were 100 people, it was really like a much smaller startup. So everyone was expected to, chip in and do their own work, not wait for too much guidance or feedback because we were moving very fast, and there was really no way for someone to sit down with you and explain things. You were expected to learn things on the fly. You were expected to do things quickly. And later on, I learned something, and I quickly started telling the people who were joining literally a few months after me, which is, don't wait for any instructions. Focus on the customer. Customer is your boss, ultimate, and based on that, decide what you need to do. And that advice in general works very well. You don't have to wait for your boss or anyone else to come and tell you that you have to do these tasks, right? So I think, and especially in a small company, that worked for me very well. The company grew very fast. In 5 years, we were over 5,000 people, over $1 billion in revenue. So it was a great journey for me in terms of experience and doing various kinds of interesting work, from consulting to product management to strategy to development. And I continued with that company later on as well for nearly 10, 11 years, served in many senior roles, worked directly with the CEO in their team as well. And finally, after 2000, I think around middle of the last decade, I decided to step out and do something on my own. This was still in the US, and I wasn't sure which company I was going to join, or I didn't have a direct idea at that time to start my own company. So I did the next best thing, which was to become a consultant to startups, where I was able to advise them based on my expertise in various areas. I wanted to move back to India all along, so I moved back to Pune a little later. And that's when I worked on my first startup here with a friend of mine who was also my uh, hostel mate at IIT Bombay. And we worked on a healthcare startup. And I think that startup did okay for a year, but then it failed. So I think there's an important lesson there that, many startups will fail. In fact, a large percentage of startups do fail. And that's perfectly okay. A failed startup is a great learning opportunity. So I worked on that. I can get into some of the reasons later on if there is specific interest. And then about 3 years back, I started working on my, about 7 years back, 3 years later, I started working on my current startup, which is going well. It's in the skill assessment space called ReliScore. It's something that is involved in creating online tests and administering them for college students as well as for professionals to assess their coding and other skills online. Right? So that's something that I'm doing. But in parallel, I worked on a lot of other interesting things. Me and my co-founder also set up Pune Tech, which was a non-commercial initiative, but which soon became Pune's largest online tech community with over 20,000 people. Because about 10 years back, we didn't have a lot of active startup communities in Pune. So this was a start. And through the Pune Tech platform, we worked on blogging, talking about tech and startups, organizing a few startup events, doing some mentoring sessions. On a personal level, I also did some small investing, angel investing in startups. So that's part of my journey that's still going on. Right now, I'm actively working with Tai Pune, the Indus entrepreneur. Some of you may have heard about it, and I'll talk about it. Uh, and I've been very actively involved in general tech and other areas, blogging as well. Some of you may know me via Twitter. I'm very active there. My Twitter ID is at A Paranspe. And I spend a lot of time there as well. Again, that's more of a hobby, but I do spend time there. So that's really brief my background. And the reason I highlighted some of these steps is you can learn few things from this if they are applicable to you, which is, type of company to work after you have graduated, what kind of work to do in an early stage company. You can decide, at what time you want to move on. That's always a decision. And then learn from failed startups as well, which is something very important. Now, let me quickly move on and talk about the Pune startup ecosystem specifically, because that's a useful thing to know, especially for those of you who are in Pune. And if you're interested in startups, this is an ecosystem that is going to be very beneficial for you as a support structure, right? So when we look at a Pune startup ecosystem, it's important to look at the brief history of tech and startups in Pune. And not many people know, but Pune has had a good tradition of some tech and science and some startup innovation going on in that space all the way back to the 19th century. We had some early agriculture, textile related automation. Uh, by today's standards, I guess you can call them startups, all the way back to the 19th century. Some of that was driven by proximity to Bombay, Mumbai, as one of the top hubs. And I don't know how many people remember, but India's second oldest engineering college and one of the top colleges even today, College of Engineering Pune, was set up here in 1854. So that also acted as a catalyst for some of these early startups and tech efforts. Later on, a lot of other colleges also came up. We had institutes like the Maratha Chamber of Commerce, also supporting industries and startups all the way back to 1930s. And then, as all of you know, a few decades later, we also became a manufacturing hub with the Kirloskars, Tatas, and Bajaj setting up big manufacturing plants here. So we have had a good manufacturing startup ecosystem, which grew out of these large companies to support them, and that's been going right. Pune has also been a hub of various research labs, like the National Chemical Laboratory, bunch of DRDO labs, as well as other kinds of newer institutions that have come up. The reason I'm highlighting all of this is research labs and educational institutions play a key part in a startup ecosystem. If you look at one of the top ecosystems in the world, I think everyone will agree that it is Bay Area, Silicon Valley, right? So it's worth looking at what are some of the things that constitute a successful ecosystem there, right? And we can all learn from that. And Pune has some of those elements, right? There are great educational institutions. There is a culture of problem solving. There's an attitude to solve new and interesting problems. There is a great talent pool, again, coming from good institutions and good companies. Quality of life is good and infrastructure is decent. Again, that is what attracts good talent. One more thing that you need to look at in a good ecosystem is proximity to markets, because ultimately, if you don't have a customer, you can have all the other things going for you and still not be able to make too much progress. So one thing you look for in a good startup ecosystem is proximity to market. The other thing that you need is obviously capital and investment capital. So you do need a good startup ecosystem will have a good number of venture capitalists as well as small angel investors. And this is one area where Pune is not fully there as yet. It's making excellent progress, but it needs to move on a little bit further in this area compared to cities like, say, Bangalore or Mumbai or Delhi. And the last point that I'll highlight, which is very important for a startup ecosystem, and it is going to be important for you as well if you're looking for a startup or starting a startup, is mentors and advisors. I think that's one of the most important aspects of any startup, because you need to rely on a lot of feedback and learning from seniors who have been there, done that, or who are domain experts in specific areas in which you're going to work, right? And a good startup ecosystem is characterized by presence of good mentors and advisors, right? And this is one area where Pune has made some excellent progress over the past few years. Again, I mentioned TIE, the Indus Entrepreneur. It has a large number of senior successful entrepreneurs, people who have worked in big companies, who are now mentors and advisors for companies, and I think, or for startups. And I think that is a very useful facility that is available to startups around here, right? of course, you need established big companies because many times mentors and advisors come from them as well. And Pune has a good number of established IT and manufacturing companies as well, right? So the reason I'm mentioning all this is, Pune has an excellent set of inputs required for such a startup ecosystem. And I would place it definitely in the top 5 in the country and one of the important growing ones in the world as well, globally, as far as startups are concerned. Pune's strengths are in software, but within software, Pune is stronger in enterprise B2B software, business to business software. We have some great examples there, including some unicorns. Unicorn is a company, a startup that has reached already $1 billion valuation. So Pune's Icertis, some of you may have heard, located right here on Senapati Popat Road, is already worth over $1 billion. So that's a unicorn. So many of these companies are in the B2B space. We don't have too many success stories in the B2C space, which is direct to consumer, business to consumer. There, Bangalore and Delhi have a lot more successful companies in that area. Pune also has, obviously, manufacturing that I mentioned. Pune also has good startup activity going on in the life sciences, energy, biology, and healthcare space. Again, thanks to institutions like the National Chemical Laboratory, IISER Pune, we have a good ecosystem going on there as well. So that's another area where Pune is doing well. Right? Now let me talk about as an ecosystem. What are the benefits of a good ecosystem for someone like you, and how do you tap into it? Right? I mean, ultimately, that is what is going to be very important for you. So as I said, ecosystem provides you with a few basic things that any startup needs to succeed: a market, a set of mentors, a set of funding, and talent. Right? And I think you can find all of it right here for many areas. Right? Now, how do you find it? How do you seek out? Right? Now, that's where it is very important to find out what are the key components of a startup ecosystem, the organizations that exist here in Pune. And there are quite a few. So I'll just list some of them. And you can find some of these if you follow my Twitter timeline as well, because I talk about these quite regularly. I mentioned TiE Pune, which is a great organization. Become members, attend events. Many of the events are free. Look at punetech.com. We have institutions like the Baroda Chamber of Commerce, which are doing some work in the startups area. We have great incubators now coming up, like the Venture Center at NCL, which is one of the top incubators in the entire country, focused more on the life sciences and healthcare area. And there are incubators that are coming up in some of our top colleges as well, like College of Engineering Pune, like Flame in MIT, and elsewhere. So tap into all these organizations, and that's where you can find out, I guess, more information about what you may require if you're thinking of a new startup, right? I know this is a lot of information, but I'm trying to cover this as quickly as possible because I want to get specific questions from you. Otherwise, this itself can be a 1-hour presentation that I don't want to bore you with right now. Now, let me quickly move to the third part of my presentation, which is going to talk about, okay, what should you be doing? Or, you are in your final year and or you have just graduated and you're interested in startups. So what next, right? So I think that's the third part that I'm going to spend about 10 minutes on, and then after that we can get into Q&A, right? Let me just pause for a minute and ask the organizers, are we getting questions? Are you going to moderate those for me?
Yes, so we are getting questions. We'll take those questions at the end of the session.
Okay, good. So then let me continue this third part for about 10 more minutes, and then we will switch to question answer. Because again, in an online format, I know, I guess everyone around the world right now is become an expert at attending online programs for the past 6 months. but it's best online or in person to have more interactive discussion. Now, when we have large number of people online, it's difficult, but let's see how that goes. So let me finish this last part. If you're interested in startups, what do you do, right? And I hope I get more specific questions on this. So first of all, you're in your final year and you're interested in a startup, right? So does that mean you have to start working on a startup right away? Not necessarily, right? I think one of the things that I keep telling people is while it's great to look at examples like Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, who were college dropouts and created amazing companies, those are more exceptions than the rule, right? If you look at the average age of successful startup founders in the US, in India, all around the world, that number is 35 plus, 40 plus, even sometimes higher. Because what that tells you is many times to do a good successful startup, you need a lot more experience with you and a lot more skills with you. And many times you may not have that in your 20s when you have just graduated or in your final year, right? So it's great that you're interested in startups, but that doesn't mean that a startup you have to worry about creating a business plan and starting a startup right after college, right? There are multiple things you can do. You can join a small company or a late stage startup. That's something what I did compared to a big company. That will also give you some great experience early on. The other thing is if you're interested in startups, you should focus on skilling yourself. Remember, this is the best time when you're in college or you're just graduated, you're still young. You need to improve your skill base because ultimately you need to be very good in one or two areas, right? And that will drastically improve your success rate for a startup. So whatever the domain that you are in, right? Could be coding, could be specific engineering areas, could be specific healthcare areas. Make sure you spend a lot of time learning on it. And when I say learning, it just doesn't mean coursework. Of course, you do courses, you audit courses, you do online courses over and above your course curriculum, but also do specific projects in the industry, in your colleges, on campus, or in some other colleges that are offering projects. Because project work is ultimately one of the best ways to learn something than doing a course or a textbook. So if you can get a good project going, that is something that is going to be very beneficial for you to learn a new skill. Right? So spend a lot of time on projects, spend a lot of time on internships, both during your college program, after your college program. That's also going to be a great learning opportunity for you. Because many times once you start a job, you may not get as much time to learn as you would like. So make the most of it and skill yourself to the extent possible, right? The other thing that I'll add is, and this is an advice not just for startups, but if you're into for a successful career in general, right? And that is early on learn hard skills. And when I say hard skills, I mean again, programming is an example of a hard skill. Knowing a specific statistical technique, analysis framework is a hard skill, right? Knowing some specific lab techniques is a hard skill because ultimately that is what is going to be very useful for you when you do things on your own, right? Many times, and in India, people, especially compared to the US, you see people very quickly don't like to get their hands dirty, even engineers, right? And I'm not just talking about computer engineers here, but all engineers. And that is not good, right? I mean, if you're a mechanical engineer, if you're an electrical engineer, stay as close to the actual problem as possible rather than just doing theoretical stuff, right? So that is very important. And then the other thing is, get as much experience as you can in a variety of different areas related to your overall focus area. I mean, it doesn't need to be that specific subject that you're interested in. So that's about skilling and getting experience and project work. The other point that I'll mention, which may not seem very obvious to you, I guess it may seem very obvious to some of you, and that is learn selling. And what do I mean by selling, right? Now, selling skills is probably the most important skill required in a startup. I mean, it's required in all walks of life, but especially in startups, because in a startup, you are not going to have dedicated sales professionals. You have to wear multiple hats, right? And the most important thing is selling, because if you can't sell your idea, I mean, you may have built a great product, but you won't be able to raise funds. You may not, I mean, and again, when I say selling, selling is not just to customers. In a startup or in a small company, you need to sell to your early employees to convince them to join you, because they'll say, okay, this is too risky. Why do I come here? You need to sell to your VCs to raise funding. And of course, you need to sell to your early customers to get your first pilot going, right? So selling is very important. And how do you do that in colleges or in early stage of your career, right? And I mean, every opportunity you get on any project or any event or any organizing that you're doing is a selling opportunity, right? Organizing a conference like this is a selling opportunity where you're reaching out to so many other people and all that, right? So connecting with people, convincing them of your ideas, your vision through a combination of passion, better presentation, and detailed understanding of that subject. Because, you know, great presentation and passion will get you only up to a certain point, but after that you need to have the content in it, right? Again, there's a misconception that salespeople are people who can just talk, and I think that's not right. Ultimately, you need to be very crisp and clear about what is it that you're pitching. So learn that, and I can't not de-emphasize selling, because you know that's something that we don't talk about a whole lot. And selling has nothing to do with an MBA, right? Again, that's the other misconception that hey, MBAs are good at selling, or if I want to sell, I need to get an MBA. Not true at all, right? Selling is a basic skill. I would say it's a basic hard skill. It's not even a soft skill that needs to be learned throughout your career and honed throughout your career, and spend as much time as you can to practice that, to learn that, to use that, right? A skill related to selling, and something that is again extremely important for your career, but especially for a startup career, is networking, right? And again, people have ideas of networking. So networking is not just sending 100 requests on LinkedIn, right? Or networking is not just showing up at a few events and then expecting it to happen. Networking is a way of life. Constantly, you're trying to connect with people and find out what is it that you can learn from them, right? It's not just a question of sending a request or meeting someone quickly and in the old days, or even people do it today, which is exchange business cards. Today, it's more LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter. Constantly seek out interesting people in various areas of your interests, even outside your interests, and then stay in touch with them, right? I think Twitter and LinkedIn have been two great tools for me. I have been on them for over 12 years on Twitter, over 15 years on LinkedIn, and they have been amazing for me. But I do a lot of in-person networking as well. Of course, not in the last 6 months, but before that, when you go to various events and all that. So again, selling and networking is something that I will absolutely emphasize again and again, and that's a way of life, right? So it's not something that you carve out time for. It's something that you do automatically on the side. It's think of it, it's like a parallel process, right? And don't do it for the sake of doing it, because if it's done in a fake manner or in a false manner, it comes across very poorly and it actually can be counterproductive. So internalize it, see how other people network. And you will find a lot of great examples in Pune, in Thai Pune, of senior, successful, veteran business and startup people who are amazing at networking. So, you know, and this is something that I would love to talk about in more detail later as well. But for now, if you just follow me on Twitter, you'll understand what networking is all about in various fields, right? So these are the three things I'll highlight, right? Which is, one is learn hard skills at all stages in your life, but definitely in the early stage of your career and when you're in college. Learn selling skills and learn networking skills. I think these are going to be extremely important for you when you do a startup, or you work for a small startup, or you work for a big company. It doesn't matter. You work for an NGO, you get into politics, you get into social, so whatever, right? These skills are going to be required. So do focus on that. And all the best. I hope I'll get some good questions, because I have finished this in 30 minutes. I have, I think, half an hour or 25 minutes at least for the plan. So waiting for questions, and hope to clarify some of these points further on this. And feel free to connect with me on Twitter if you have any further questions, or LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we'll go ahead with some questions. Um, Nikita asked how to get patent for a startup idea since there are a lot of people with ideas. How to ensure that our idea is unique?
So good question. I'll talk about both ideas as well as patent. So if you want to get a patent, there are very structured processes, and you'll find a lot of online information about how to file for a patent and the process and all that. Venture Center that I mentioned organizes regular workshops. Some of them are free, some of them are very reasonable. That can give you specific education on the whole patent process. So get in touch with them. They will also be able to help you get a patent if you have an interesting enough idea. To step back to how to get a unique idea. Now, I think that is a misconception in the mind of many startup founders, and this is nothing to do with young startup founders. We have seen this misconception in the minds of people who have worked in the industry for 15, 20 years and were thinking of a startup. Everyone thinks they have a unique idea, and it's like the next, as they say, next best thing after sliced bread, and they want to be very secretive about the idea. And one of the first things we tell them if they come to the mentoring is ideas are a dime a dozen. I mean, you may think it's a very crazy idea, but unless you are like a real Nobel winning scientist in a very complex scientific discipline, business ideas are not unique at all, right? I mean, almost everyone has had those ideas. So don't focus too much on unique ideas. It's all about execution, right? Pick any idea. So many successful companies in the world haven't created their original ideas. They were the first to prototype it, sell it, implement it. So don't get, unless you have really invented something which is very cool in a core science discipline, like a new chemical molecule or a new physics, something in pure science typically, right? Or some very abstract thing. I think don't worry about patented ideas. It's all about execution, how quickly you are able to build it out, prototype it, sell it, and move on. Next question.
Sir, I have a follow-up question on that one actually about the pattern one. So then how like I have read a lot of stories of big tech, encroaching on your ideas and using them like Facebook, Snapchat, that debacle. How do you?
I think I mean, if that happens, that's a good problem to have. But to get there, you will probably need to do a startup for many years before a big company will even have interest in you, right? So I think that's something you wouldn't worry about right now for the next 10 years. And if you get to that, I would say that's a very good problem to have. At that point, you can consider, either selling at a large price, or you can figure out a legal option or whatever. But I mean, as I said, that happens in 0.001% of the cases, right?
Okay.
And that also depends on how core your idea is. Right? If it's a very core deep science idea, then yes, something like that can happen. Otherwise, don't. The example that you gave of Facebook encouraging into Snapchat, it has nothing to do with idea. It's all about execution. I think Facebook is executing better than Snapchat. There are cases of big companies executing faster than small companies, right? And there are cases of small companies executing faster than big companies. So Microsoft executed faster than IBM and became bigger than IBM, right?
Yeah.
But there are
That's
also
good.
cases of big companies executing faster than small companies and killing small companies, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Facebook, Snapchat thing may go that way. So it is all about idea execution, nothing to do with the idea per se.
Okay. Thank you.
So the next question is asked by Vasu. Is brand name necessary for career development, or should we go for startups? And even if we do, is it necessary enough? Is it secure enough to work with startups in long term, or go with already established companies, as is already working with a startup in e-grocery?
Yeah, I think brand name is obviously important to some extent, because for good or for bad, companies do look at your education background, and good colleges to carry some brand names. But more than brand name, good colleges also carry a good network effect, right? I mean, typically companies that come to recruit there, the other alumni from that college. So the overall networking effect of a good brand name is always useful, right? Secondly, yes, there is obviously a higher risk when you work for startups than an established company, because the chances of failure of a startup is going to be higher than big companies. That's not to say big companies don't fail either. There are cases of big companies failing as well. So I would think it's a risk reward ratio ultimately, and everyone has to make that call for based on their own personal preference, right? if you are into risk taking and you don't mind, switching startups or switching companies a few times early on in your career, then I think absolutely stay working with a startup, because you're definitely going to learn more, get more interesting experience than you would in a big company. But on the other hand, if you are interested in a stable, steady job where you do your good work and not worry, then maybe big company is right for you. So it depends, and I won't say what is right or what is wrong. It all depends on what that individual. It's not that everyone has to work for a startup. That's also probably not a good idea, right? So it all depends on what is it that you want to do.
Thank you, sir. Shreyas wants to know if it is necessary to start with a partnership.
So partnership in what context? Can you elaborate? I mean, if you're asking for partnership as a startup, uh, or if you're asking for, do you want to look for a co-founder when you start? Let me assume that your question is to do with partnership as a co-founder early on, right? And I think that's usually a good idea. Most startups, again, I don't have the exact statistic record with me, but most startups are started by more than one founder, right? And it's a good idea because early on there are so many unknowns when you're doing a startup that it's helpful to have more than a pair of eyes, as they say, right? And if you can have, and the second thing is it's also very difficult to hire people early on. So a co-founder in some sense is the best hire because they share your vision, they share your values, and many times you don't even have to pay them because if they are a co-founder, then they are sharing the risk reward with you as well. So from that point, also having a partner, having a co-founder early on is very important. The best case scenario is if you can find co-founders with complementary skill sets, because one person could be a strong techie, one person could be a good at sales or operations. I think that's a good combination. Instead of two techies coming together, it's always better to have co-founders with complementary skills because that also feeds the need. So I wouldn't say it's a must-have, but many startups have started with co-founders. So I think it's a good idea. Okay, I think the next question, even I'm able to read them. Is it to raise capital? Is that the question?
Yes, sir.
Again, how to raise capital efficiently in the early days of startup? I mean, obviously, I can understand your need that capital is very important. You have to raise funding. Uh, so there are two ways to do it. If you're in a very early stage startup that you've just started out after college and early days, you can try to look for some of the incubators out there which can have some grants early on, right? They won't be funds, but you can get some grants. Again, they're very tough to get, but you can try. If you want to get regular funding, which is say angel funding or seed funding, I think you are not going to get it very early on because most of these investors will wait for a year or two to see exactly what you have built, what you have developed, and all that, right? So many times that funding the early funding has to come from your own pocket. Friends and family is usually the most common source of funds, unfortunately, in that case, right? So I think at a very early stage, you really have only two options. One is try to get grants from an incubator in your college or some of the few ones that I mentioned around Pune, or friends and family. Angel investments usually come in after a year or two when you have something to show, something to build. You have built something and you have something to show, and maybe even a pilot customer.
Thank you, sir. So we have next question. Which sector has scope? Manufacturing, service, or retail?
Again, it depends on as a job or as a startup. I think all of these have excellent opportunities right now. I think manufacturing is transforming right now through the use of IoT, Internet of Things. Some of you may have heard of it. Uh, Retail is obviously getting transformed at many levels because of new changes in supply chain management and personalization in e-commerce. AI is AI in a sense is a horizontal. AI is transforming virtually every business, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's retail. Service, I don't know what you mean by service. I mean, if it's IT services or is it a generic field? I think obviously IT services is doing very well. So all these three sectors are interesting, and in all these sectors you have great opportunities to work in established companies, and you have startups as well. So I would think all these sectors in India, especially, I would say most sectors are doing quite well for the long term. And forget what's happening this year. This year is a slight blip on the radar, as they say. But I think from a long-term perspective, I think all sectors look quite interesting. So don't micromanage a sector selection process. Focus more on what is of interest to you and what areas you know better. Actually, let me mention one more interesting area, right? I think that's very relevant to what's going on right now in the world, and that's healthcare. And anything you can do in healthcare related tech and services is obviously going to be a very interesting area in the coming years.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, as an early stage startup, there are no metrics or stats to show. What all will you suggest to grab attention of angel investors, venture capitalists, as well as customers?
That's a good question. I think what you need early on is a good set of pilot customers, right? And the way to do it is you have to tap on your early network. And many times that early network may come from friends and family, may come from college seniors who have already started working in bigger companies, maybe 1 to 3 years senior to you, and can come from your academic institution, can from your professors, from your other staff in the college, may have a network. So it all goes back to network. I think your first step is to get a customer, even before you can get to uh, funding, right? So I think the more you network and network online, network at the college level, your networks will be your peers, your seniors, your faculty, and your friends and family, right? Then if you're active on social media, or if you have a blog, or if you have an active Twitter page or something like that, you may be able to network outside of that as well. So, but that network is very important, as I said. And then once you have a network, you start floating your idea, saying, "Hey, I have this and this idea. I've built this and prototype. Would you be interested?" Right? And then reach out through a friend of a friend or a contact of a contact. But there's a shortcut. I think the other thing that I would suggest to you is attend startup events. Many of them happen in around Pune. TIE organizes them. NASCOM organizes them. Many organizations and again, if you follow Pune Tech or some of the things that I mentioned, you will learn about them. MCCI organizes them. So these startup events are great to do some in-person networking and meet potential early adopter customers, right? Also try to find good mentors early on. Again, some of these established organizations can help you, like TIE, help you find a mentor early on. And the mentor can help you with some references for an early customer. So I think before angel investors, your first goal should be to network to find a prototype customer. Because without a prototype customer, what you build is going to be meaningless, right? Whether you're a final year college student, or if you're or you could be like a 40-year-old veteran of multiple startups, right? Whatever it is, you don't want to build a product in isolation. You have to build a product or a service working very closely with a customer and get that validation from the customer. So work on that customer first. So other funding and all that will follow. Again, it requires networking.
Thank you, sir. The next question is about how to convert college project to a market model.
Again, it depends. I mean, again, if your college project is really great, then of course it can be a startup idea in itself, right? And there have been some examples of good college projects that have gone on to become startups. But again, that number unfortunately is very, very, very small. So again, it depends on if you have done something truly interesting and truly innovative. I would talk to the faculty, the guide, the head of the department, and same response as the previous one. I mean, if the project is really interesting, then I would seek out customers first. Right? If you can have a customer who shows interest in that project, or the company that you did the project with, right? If they show interest in taking it further, then that would be the first step to start. If you can't find that, then I think there is some limitation in the idea.
Okay, so the next question is, what is scope for social startups? Where can we find investment opportunities for social startups?
Good question. I think there is a good deal of activity happening in the social sector, and let me clarify. When I say social startups, these are sectors that these are startups that are focused on some social improvement element. Could be energy, could be education, could be healthcare, could be other working with some NGO. But these are not necessarily NGOs. These are actual for-profit startups that are working in these sectors, right? So there are some specific incubators that are doing work in this area in and around Pune that I'm familiar with. So if you message me, I may be able to put you in with your specific idea. I may be able to put you in touch with some people who are working in the social startup area. Don't think it's a formal incubator, but Pune International Center, if you check out the website, does an annual conference of social startups every year in November. That is worth attending and finding out what all the interesting social startups that are doing. And there are other events as well. So reach out to me if you have a specific idea. But yes, there are similar resources available around social startups as well in and around Pune.
Okay, so the next question is by Abhishek. If startup fails, then what steps should be taken to overcome this or turn it into a new business?
I think, I mean, probably not, you may not like that answer, but startups do fail. I mean, the 90% of the startups do fail. So I mean, you have to pretty much plan for that reality, right? Uh, and I mean, if startups fail, typically you won't have any salvage value out of it, especially if you have sort of a software product or something like that. So I think it's very difficult to reconvert that to another new idea or something like that. It's even more difficult. The main issue is going to be that of funding, right? I mean, if you have friends and family who are willing to support you and work on the next idea, then sure. But otherwise, if you have a failed startup, then you're not immediately going to get more resources for your next startup or modification, right? Uh, so I think one option after a failed startup is obviously go and do a regular job again. I mean, you may have done a job before, then did a startup, then again did a job, and that is perfectly fine. In fact, that is helpful. Many companies actually do value a failed startup experience very well. They actually it's often treated as a positive, right? That you tried this, and everyone understands that it may not work, right? So might not be a bad idea to go back to the industry, mid-size or large company, work for a couple of years, and then again, if you're a startup-minded person, you can come back and start working on the next idea after that. Working in a big company will help you on two fronts, right? One is obviously it will help you financially, but it will also help you with greater exposure, greater learning that you may not be able to do in a small startup of your own.
Thank you, sir. Now, Akshay wants to know how German companies benefit Pune for startups.
So German companies benefiting from startups or startups pitching to German companies? I'm not clear exactly what the question is, but let me talk about German companies because I think it's a good question in the context of Pune. Pune has the largest number of German companies in the country, over 350 of them, and they're primarily here because two of the largest auto companies from Germany, Mercedes and Volkswagen, are right here, right? So, so yes, I mean there are a lot of mid-size and large German companies out here who are supplying to these larger companies. In terms of how they benefit from startups in Pune, I think I think any mid-sized company is also looking for inputs from startups because they look at startups in two, three ways, right? They look at startups as provider of interesting solutions that may not come from big companies, solving a unique problem that a big company may not be interested in. Sometimes mid-sized and large companies look at startups just as a learning opportunity, and it can be a win-win because they realize that, hey, this startup is doing interesting area and I want to learn something in this area, right? And they may not copy it, or they may even copy it, but for that they will actually give you a small pilot as well. So it becomes a win-win because they get to learn, but you also get to work with an established customer. So that is common in all companies. I mean, not necessarily German companies. And thirdly, if you're really doing interesting work in that area, low probability, but you can become an acquisition target for a mid-sized company. So all these three things are valid not just for German companies, but for any manufacturing or any mid-sized company in and around Pune. So if you have a B2B product, and you should seek out mid-sized companies for all these three reasons, whether it's a pilot, whether it's pitching any other idea to them, because ultimately you want customer validation. Customer validation from any company is a great thing. So work on that, right? And if you're specifically interested in working with German companies, if that is the question, then I would suggest reaching out to the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce in Pune. It's a very active organization, one of the largest in India, right here in Pune. And they do a lot of work with German companies in Pune, and they organize their own events as well. So it will be good to reach out to them, become a member, find out what help they can provide in connecting you with some of these companies. So I think that may be a good start.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, how MCCIA or other organizations help to grow in Pune?
So again, similar. All these incubators and chambers of commerce are facilitators. They'll help you in multiple ways. They'll help you in networking. They'll help you in training. They will organize a bunch of different events and programs for various kinds of skills and capabilities that you need to learn. And they'll help you to reach out to prospective customers as well. So whether it's MCCI, whether it's Indo-German Chamber of Commerce, all these institutions are, think of them as facilitators for various things that you need. And ultimately, remember, these go back to the three things that I had mentioned some time back, right? Which is hard skills, networking skills, and selling skills, right? All these facilitation or facilitating organizations help you on all these three. But they're not going to do your work for you. They are there to help. And they'll help you with some connections as well. But ultimately, you have to do these three things on your own. So don't rely too much on these as well.
Okay. So the next question is, how to get government fundings for startups in India?
I mentioned Venture Center. Venture Center is one of the top incubators in the country. And they are focused more on healthcare, life sciences, less on software, but they do have some software focus as well. So they are probably one of the largest entities in India focused on startups, both from a size standpoint in terms of the number of startups they have, as well as their ability to connect various government grants to startups. So they represent a variety of different government programs from various ministries, from various organizations, state, central governments, and all that. So they are probably the best resource, not just in Pune, but probably in all of India, to find out if there are government funding, government grants available for your startup or for your idea. So I would definitely reach out to the Venture Center with your idea, with your proposal, and or attend one of some of their workshops and find out if your idea is likely to, maybe not right now, but maybe 6 months from now, a year from now, can get any kind of government grants funding. And remember, government funding often comes in multiple ways. Sometimes it's an outright grant, which is probably the best thing to get, but tougher. Sometimes it's a soft loan, a low interest or a no interest loan. Sometimes it can also be a small equity funding. Some government agencies can do that. So there are a variety of different options there, but Venture Center is probably the best resource in all of India to help you with government funding.
So the next question is related to MSME. Do MSME supports social startups, or do they focus more on commercial products only?
I mean, there are exceptions of some MSMEs focused on social sector. But again, you'll find less examples of that because MSMEs are in some sense startups themselves. So many times they are struggling with basic company requirements. So you will find some examples, yes, but it really depends on what. So social sector companies exist in all dimensions, right? I mean, you will have very early stage startups, you'll have mid-sized startups, you'll have large startups, you'll have established companies. So companies working in social sectors will be across all dimensions. So yes, you will find some MSMEs working in the social sector as well, but not many.
Thank you, sir. An MBA persons fill skills through courses and trainings, and what is their respective importance while initiating a startup? Do one have to consider having MBA degree or better hard skill for startups to flourish?
I think that's an excellent question. Again, there is no right or wrong answer. I think, as I said, MBA is not absolutely essential to learn selling, and hard skills are not absolutely essential to a successful startup. So, because there are exceptions on both sides. Uh, Having said that, I mean, given that disclaimer, I think uh, for an early stage startup, especially if you're in the core tech area, uh, software area, or some core technology, higher skills are going to be more useful for you, right? If you're a big company person, want to work for a big company, a multinational, and all, MBA is going to be more helpful for you. But again, I'm saying that with big exceptions because there are a lot of counter examples that I myself can give. Uh, Generally, MBAs help you with sort of business problem solving skills, right? And many of those skills that you learn from there are applicable for larger businesses, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whether it's finance, whether it's strategy. Typically, many of those things that you learn are applicable for large companies, not even mid-sized companies, large companies. So they may not be directly applicable to startup. On the other hand, if you're really interested in startup, having a core skill is going to be very important. But MBA teaches you a lot of some very good analytical and problem solving skills, which are applicable for anything in life. Right? I mean, those are. The other thing MBAs teach you is good selling skills, uh, good networking, good presentation, good selling skills, which are important for startup. So again, it depends on what kind of startup and other areas of interest you are looking at. But I think, I mean, simplest answer would be both are important. But I think if you have to really pick and choose, it also depends on the kind of area. If you're a hardcore technical person and you want to do something in core tech, then a master's in a core tech area is probably going to be more useful for you. If you're a breadth-oriented person and want to expand skills further, then I would think MBA would be a better option. But let me add one more point here. I think it also depends on the type of institute. Given a choice, I would go to the highest ranked institute that I get admission to, right? So let me clarify. So, for example, if you're getting an admission in a top ranked MBA but not so good master's program, I would go with an MBA. Because ultimately, if networking is going to be important for the rest of your life, right? Connections are going to be important for the rest of your life. I think going to a good college is more important than anything else, right? So I think also put that perspective in mind. I mean, you are all now final year students or graduates, but one thing that we tell students in 11th and 12th standard is, and this is people doing JE and all that always have this question. I'm getting a top branch in a low end college and a not so good branch at a high end college. And I don't have a strong preference. What should I pick? Right. And there, our standard answer is always go to a top ranked college, even if the branch may not be the top, because the college is more important than the branch. So I think that's a general perspective that works later on for MBA versus MS decision, for a job decision as well. Because wherever you go to, whether it's a college for undergrad, college for grad, a job, the kind of network and the kind of people you're going to work with is going to help you for the next 40, 50 years of your career. So look at that as well. Look at, I mean, remember I mentioned that, I had a decision of working for a big company or a small company. This small company I visited for an interview. They flew me down to Dallas for that. And there were so many young, high energy, very sharp professionals, just 1, 2, 3 years senior to me. That energy level and the kind of people, and I got to meet all of those people, and I realized, hey, I'm going to work with these kind of people. So that was more important to me as well. So make that decision based on that as well. And of course, as students, you can't make that decision. So then usually a higher ranked college is a better option. But actually, let me add one more point. I'm glad that this question came up from one more dimension. The other, because don't be in a hurry to join a startup or work directly in a big company as well. Getting a master's or an MBA is a good option for the long term career, right? I mean, you may think that, okay, you have done 4 years of education, I may need to get a job, or I'm tired of education, I may need to get a job. And that's fine. I mean, you can go and work for 2 years and come back, but either you do it directly after 4 years of college, or you do it after working for 2 to 5 years. Uh, to come back, try and come back and do a good master's in India, outside India, or a good MBA. I think whether it's startup or a large company, in the long term, it is going to be beneficial to you.
Thank you, sir. So we have a lot of questions, but since we are running out of time, I'll just take 2 to 3 questions more.
Okay.
So the next question is, why small startups are in green area, example renewable?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Why small startups are in green area, example renewable?
For renewable energies, yeah, there is good activity happening in startups, and again in Pune, Venture Center is a good place for you to go and visit to look at renewable energy startups. There is some work going on in solar and biofuels. Pune is also a hub of biofuels. Large company like Praj Industries has done a lot of work in that area. Some of you chemical engineers especially may be familiar with that. So solar and biofuels, there's some good work happening in NCL and in Venture Center. So if you're interested in that area, definitely visit the Venture Center and learn more about what's already happening before you start working on that area.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is, how do we improve our networking and what is your go-to-market strategy?
Okay, so two different questions. Networking, I already explained. You don't look at networking as a separate activity. You're doing networking 24/7. So every opportunity you get, in-person meeting, online connections, all tools, as I said, Twitter, LinkedIn are amazing tools. I wish I had them when I was in college. We didn't have them. So use technology, use in-person meetings, use calls, use connects. Look at networking as a 24/7 activity, but do networking for the sake of learning and for identifying knowledge, identifying information, identifying connects, and just for casual reasons or doing it as a chore. Right? That's number one. Go-to-market strategy. What's the question exactly?
What is your go-to-market strategy, like personally?
Oh, it's for me or it's for a startup? Not able to understand that part.
It is for you, sir. Like, what is your go-to-market strategy since you have?
Okay, for my startup, again, so it depends on the startup that you have, right? So right now my go-to-market one of my current startups right now, Rally Score, is focused on skills assessment for an online on an online platform, and our customer base is typically mid-size IT and software companies and some large companies as well. So our go-to-market strategy right now is reaching out to our networks, and thankfully, me and my co-founder have excellent networks in Pune and in Bangalore and even outside India. So, and that's because we have spent over 20 years in the industry, and our customer base is also IT and software, where our major network is. So that helps. So in a sense, our go-to-market strategy is a little non-standard because we are trying to tap an industry which is our own sweet spot and our own experience area. So our go-to-market strategy is then just going through our hundreds of contacts and people working in various companies, reaching out to them, and talking about our value proposition.
So the next question is, if you get a chance to change one thing about the startup or company, what would you change? Knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
That's a good question. I think on my healthcare startup, which failed, I think one of the things that we need to focus on very early on, and which we probably didn't do as good a job as we would like, is focus on selling to the target market that you're trying to sell to, right? In the healthcare startup that we tried 10 years back, our core audience was doctors. We're building a product for doctors. And we clearly didn't have the skill sets at that time coming from IT software industries and large companies to sell to doctors. Right? So maybe in retrospect, we should have partnered with or hired a pharma representative or someone like that who can sell to doctors, for example, right? So I think, yeah, I think that's a learning. And again, it goes back to one of the most important aspects of any startup, which is, selling. And if you don't succeed at selling, then your startup most likely is not going to succeed, right? So anything that you can do to help improve selling is what would be the most important lesson learned for most people from startups.
Thank you, sir. Sir,
So I have another 5-10 minutes if you want. I know we should pass time, but depends on what your schedule is. If you have another talk coming after this, then we can close.
okay, so
Or
we'll
we
take
can
two
go for another
questions
2
more.
questions. Okay.
Yeah. So the next question is, can you give more information about product management?
Okay, I think that's a very broad question. It's one of my personal favorite areas because that's something that I worked on a lot about 20 years back. Product management is a very important function, but in mid-size and large companies, I think product management is it's a very important function in any company, whether it's a startup or a large company. But in a startup, you don't carve it out as a separate area. You do it as a task, but you don't carve it as a separate function. Whereas as your company becomes larger, you need to create a separate function. Normally product management is a function, whether it's a software company or even a manufacturing company or any other company. Product management is an area which sits between people who are actually building or developing stuff, say developers, software developers in a software company, and people who are using the stuff or selling the stuff, which is end customers or your sales, right? So in a small company and a startup, typically 1 or 2 people do all these functions, which is selling, building, and all of that. So there is no separate product management person. But but this is not scalable. As you become bigger and bigger, as you have more customers, more salespeople, more developers, product management becomes a very important centralized function that can then channelize issues from both sides. So on the inbound side, you're taking in requirements from customers, from salespeople, and then deciding what the product needs to look like over the next 3 months, 6 months, year. And otherwise, every requirement from a customer, if it starts going to a developer, then you may not build a good product at all. You'll just build a series of custom application, which is not going to be a good product, right? So product management serves a very important function of being this central middle layer to refine and to consolidate and to create a uniform architecture of all these requirements and build a good product architecture out of it, and then feed that to the development to get it built. So I mean, the question is, how do you learn product management? Again, it's a difficult skill. I don't think there'll be anyone who will teach you product management. You may find some courses, but I don't think they're that useful. I think product management is one of the functions that you learn on the job. I mean, there are people who start as developers and who become product managers, and there are people who start as sales or consultants closer to customers and then become product managers. I mean, there are both examples, and both can work. But if you're a developer, if you spend a lot of time with customers, you can become a good product manager. If you're a consultant or a salespeople and you spend a lot of time with developers, you can be a good product manager. Because product manager has to understand both sides, and I think that is very important.
The next question is, when having an idea, how should we proceed in applying it?
I think that was one of the early questions that I answered. I think just idea doesn't really matter. Right? I think if you think you have a great idea, look at where that idea can be applied and identify a specific problem that you're going to solve with that idea. I mean, idea can be great, but if you can't solve a real world problem with that, it can't convert to a startup. It can still be an abstract academic idea, and you may write a research paper on it, right? But if your goal is to convert it to a startup, I think you have to find a real world problem that you can solve with that idea, and then figure out how you're going to prototype and solve a smaller example of that problem. I think that is more important. Otherwise, that idea is just a theoretical idea.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is, how much PMP certification is useful?
Again, I think depends. I think not. If you ask me honestly, I don't think a whole lot. But some very large IT services companies do value it a little bit on the resume uh, in project management functions and things like that. So it has some value, but I think small and mid-sized companies definitely don't value it. They value real skills more than that certificate. Uh, so yeah, I think unless you're working for some really large services companies, I don't think it's that valuable. It's my view. I think you will find some counter views as well with project managers.
Thank you, sir. Now Gaurav wants to know what is the future of e-vehicle?
I think very big. I think clearly electric mobility is going to be the future, right? I think in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see a significant increase in the percentage of electric vehicles all over the world, and especially in India, because we have very, very few right now. And you'll see them at all places, right? Whether it's two-wheelers, whether it's four-wheelers, and even some larger transportation vehicles. So I think this is clearly one of the hot, fast-growing areas for the next 5, 10, 20 years. And there are a lot of opportunities to work in this space, right? I mean, there are opportunities to work on battery technology. There's opportunities to work on powertrain, which is the motors and things like that. A car or a vehicle itself is changing with so much software inside it, right? Compared to what you had even 5 or 10 years back. So a car OS itself is a huge software development opportunity in the years ahead. So I think the whole e-mobility space and the car of the future space is going to be a great opportunity and a good opportunity in Pune as well, given that we already have so much of auto manufacturing right here. Do look at on the website. I don't know how much of it is there, but do look at the website of KPIT Cummins, which is one of Pune's well-established old company. They are doing some really good work in future cars. So you may be able to find some general information on their website about what they're doing in this space. And of course, if you're interested in this space, follow global leaders like Tesla. They're clearly the world leaders right now in this space.
Um, Thank you, sir. So the last question is, what is the best piece of advice you would want to give to the younger generation?
The same thing, I think something that I repeated about 20 minutes back, right? Which is if you're in college or if you're a young professional, I think I would focus on three sets of skills, right? Which are going to be useful for you no matter what you do. They're going to be useful for you in startups. They're going to be useful in large companies. They are going to be useful if you're doing social startups. They are going to be useful in any setting. And those three are, become domain experts in some areas, and for that you need curiosity and desire to learn and desire to understand new things in whatever it is that you're doing, right? Develop hard skills, develop domain skills in some area. Second thing is develop networking skills, right? And third is learn selling skills. I think these three things will take you far no matter what you do.
Thank you, sir, for answering those questions. It was a pleasure to have you with us. And our delegates, I hope you gained as many insights as I did and more from this illuminating talk. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. It was a good discussion, even though I couldn't see the participants. That's the problem with online sessions, I guess, but hope it was beneficial. Do check out my Twitter timeline and my LinkedIn for updates around this. Or if you have any specific queries around it, twitter.com/aparansky and linkedin.com/in/aparansky. So same username at both networks. Thank you very much and all the best for your careers.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.